Let's talk to Oluseyi Adeyemo. He's a public policy analyst, and he joins us now virtually. Good morning, Mr. Adeyemo. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Laddie. Thank you so much for having me.
We do seem, as has been reported over the last couple of days, to have achieved some kind of stalemate here. Russia not being able to conquer, and I use that word carefully, Ukraine, partly because of the support that Ukraine is receiving from everywhere else, but Ukraine unable to totally put Russia out because of Russia's superior military strength. So with that stalemate now, do you think there is more motivation on ground to move towards possible negotiations or return to the peace talks?
I think so, because the truth of the matter is, from both ends, I want to believe that both parties never expected this. Russia, on its part, probably never knew that the Ukrainians would be able to stand their own as they've been able to. I'm sure President Putin never thought in his wildest dreams that they would get this kind of support, and that President Zelensky would have the kind of courage that is exhibited. I would also want to say that Ukrainians never thought that Russia would ever invade them and would do all of the things they've done. I mean, the truth of the matter is the rest of the world. I, as a person, never thought that in this time and age, any president would want to go. I mean, whatever it is, we thought we had come to an age where we all talk and we negotiate on the table. So I'm hopeful that the result or the stand as it is today would kind of push all of us back to where we all thought we now do things on the table, negotiations. We never thought that we would start to, kill ourselves like we're doing right now. So I want to believe that the stand-up, as it were, has kind of helped to send some signal to both parties that what we need to do is to talk as civilized people that we are now.
The president of Ukraine has indicated that he's prepared to continue with the peace talks. In fact, he has also indicated that he would like a situation where himself and President Vladimir Putin could sit down one-on-one and talk about this situation. But this week, the Russian president said that the talks had reached a dead end because there were no concrete proposals addressing any of the concerns that they had put on the table. And someone I had spoken to earlier on this week had said the combination of outside forces participating in the conflict is not just Russia and Ukraine. There are other people involved. That the end game is to, before returning to peace talks, bleed Russia long enough as to present Ukraine with an advantage if and when they return to peace talks. Do you think this is what is happening?
You know, the truth is, when a person decides to take a decision, like President Putin has taken, he has some demand, he has some expectations. And for whatever is what, like I said earlier, it doesn't look like it's going the way he had proposed it will go. And so that in itself is making him do a lot of think and rethink. And you're very right. There are a lot of parties and interests that is involved in this. This is not just Russia and Ukraine. This is the world. This is US. This is Europe. This is a lot of people. I mean, India, China. A lot of people's interests are involved. And we're talking about Russia, because Russia then is not just any country. I mean, these are the people who sort of supply the rest of the world with, gas, with food, and a lot of things are being played out. And we all know that whatever we do in this world, it's always clear that politics and economics, a lot of interests are always in place. So you're very right that we're not just dealing with the interest of Russia and Ukraine. We're dealing with interest of a lot of countries, of a lot of power bloc, of a lot of people whose interest. I mean, you can imagine yesterday, the president of France, was being quoted, to saying, look, I cannot outrightly say this is genocide. This is not and he had to prove it. He had to say to the rest of the world, yes, I see what is happening. I'm not comfortable with it, but I cannot just use the word genocide. The president of America had used the word genocide and all that. And so you will see a situation where people cannot expressly take certain decisions or do certain things. But, at the end of the day, we just pray that whatever is happening, the thousands of people that are dying in Ukraine, this will stop, because it is not something that everybody is happy about. It happens on a daily basis, and it is very saddening what we're seeing there.
Among the many players that you mentioned yourself just now who are involved one way or the other in this is China. And I'd asked quite a number of those I've spoken to this week about the role that China has or could possibly play in all of this. There are those who say that China is about the biggest country left, the most powerful military country left that has good relations with Russia, and that the trust built between the president of China and the president of Russia means that it is quite possible for the Chinese to play a mediatory role in all of this. Because Russia, in this case, is the aggressor. But do you think that is feasible, especially against the background that because of that relationship, China may not be as trusted by the Ukrainians and their backers?
You see, the truth of the matter is, the point we are at now, and I'm talking to the world, is not a situation or a point where we mistrust or start to say, oh, that person is wrong or right. It's a point where we would leverage and take advantage of whatever we have. If China is seen as the most viable country, the most probable country, let me use that word, that could do this job for us, I think the best thing is for the rest of the world, Ukrainians and the rest of the world, to trust them enough to do the job for us. Because at the end of the day, I know that China or the Chinese are not totally, they will not say that they're most comfortable with the situation on ground right now. They're just trying to look at what is best for them and what is best for their people, which is what everybody or every reason do. So I think if they're the ones, and obviously they seem to be the ones that we all can entrust this negotiation, to, then we better do. We better leverage on it. And I think this is another lesson we all have to learn. In the way we relate to people, the idea of completely, saying, oh, this person is my enemy or that person is my enemy, I'm not going to do business with this person, should stop. We should learn how to keep, some level of a second chance as well, where you can leverage on, where you can reach. Because right now it seems that, that hard stand that we normally have at other people is not something that is healthy for the world, and we better learn that lesson from this. And at the end of the day, going forward, we'll then deal with ourselves in a way where we, sort of see the other country as a country that we might need at some point, like we all are needing China right now.
The other part of this, of course, you alluded to it earlier when you talked about Russia being a supplier of so many things that possibly before this crisis and this war began, most people did not know that many of those things came from Russia. To a large extent, that also applies to Ukraine. And in the aftermath of this invasion, there have been people who have said that, okay, perhaps it was time, or we should have, including Nigeria, and that's why I say we should have tried to diversify our sources of many of these products, wheat, fertilizer, iron ore, and all of that, all coming from these two countries. But in the meantime, while many people are trying to put that into place, the war goes on, and many people are dead, and that means that positions have hardened. What do you think, as someone who's looking at the situation from the outside in, what do you think would be a best compromise that sees both people walking away with something but nobody being able to declare victory?
Okay, so we're talking about people, a lot of people are dying every day, and it will be very, very impossible for Russia to completely say that they don't have some relation or relatives in Ukraine. The relationship obviously is beyond just country to country. It's definitely, and which is why this war is coming up in the first place. So I know that everything that needs to be looked at is being looked at. Like we rightly talked about, the fact that there's been a standoff, everyone is having a think, everyone is looking at it. There's been enough time to sort of have a second look at what prompted this in the first place. And question I'm sure is being asked by all parties: is this worth it? Do we add other options? Should we could we have done this better or in another way that would not hurt all of us like it's hurting all of us? I mean, anybody can say whatever they want to say. I know that President Putin is definitely not comfortable with being called by the names he's being called now. And I know that because he's human, he's a human being, I'm sure there's been a rethink and everyone is, looking at this in another way. And I'm sure the Ukrainians also want something out of this because people are losing their homes, they're losing their livelihood, they're losing their family, everybody is being disoriented. And this is not something that should continue for even an hour, not to talk of a day. So I'm sure that as it is right now, all of us have learned lessons and we all want out. We want this to stop now.
Indeed, we all do. Mr. Oluseyi Adeyemo, thank you so much for your perspective this morning and for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
After the break, World Bank reduces sub-Saharan Africa's growth forecast. Please join us again.